Hi, everybody. Annette Hines here. Welcome to the Circle of Care. I wanted to talk to you tonight in our series, our planning series, about planning in 3 not so easy steps. And today's topic is all about letters of intent. It is actually probably the most important part of your planning because it really gets to the meat of what do you want to communicate to people? So when we first started this series, we really went over, the initial planning process. What does it mean to plan? And what do I mean by planning in 3 not so easy steps? The first step is figuring out what your goals and intentions are. That is maybe not so easy as it sounds, but you can start with small goals and then bigger goals. So little rocks, medium rocks, big rocks, things in your life that you're trying to accomplish. When it comes to planning a life or planning support for yourself or person in your life with a disability that you care for, these can be overwhelming and daunting goals and intentions for sure. But you cannot map your way to those goals if you don't know where you're going. So I gave you the example of setting an address in your GPS and making sure that you had it right. And I told a story about how I got lost going to a presentation because I put the wrong place in. Then I put the wrong town or the wrong address in. And then the third time, I finally navigated to the right place after seeking help. So part number 2 of this planning in 3 not so easy steps, or step 2, if you want to follow along with my analogy, is that once you know where you're going, you need to map your way there. And in the estate planning world, we do this with documents. But in all other phases, we are going to do this with more than just documents. We're going to do this with techniques and a team. And in this phase, and this is the one that people are most familiar with, you are not just going to grab your documents, but you are going to start identifying where are the holes? What roles do I need filled for planning my person's life? I'm going to need therapy. I'm going to need a teacher. I'm going to need someone who can help with shopping and finances. I'm going to need someone who can be a friend. I'm going to need folks who bring recreation into this person's life. I'm going to need some job support, all of these pieces. And once you know what those roles are going to be, you need to figure out kind of what those job descriptions are. So what are the responsibilities going to be? What type of person am I looking for? That sort of thing. Once you have that all set, and I know that's really sounds so easy, but it is not easy. Then you get to step 3, and that is communication. Communicating your goals and communicating the plan, communicating the steps, communicating the map. And this is the step that most people forget or don't want to do because it's just too painful. I totally get that. I was there. Let me tell you, my daughter Elizabeth passed at 17, and I had an estate plan. It wasn't a great estate plan, but it was something that we definitely threw together. However, I did not do a letter of intent. Every time I sat down to try to write something, I just ended up in tears. I couldn't even think about not being here to take care of her. Couldn't think about anybody else who could do the things that I do. I just couldn't get through it. So believe me when I tell you, I really get where you're coming from. Completely, 100%, totally. This is hard. But have you ever tried to fill in a job or show up at a job and you had no training and no idea what you were supposed to be doing. When I was between college and law school, I did some temp work, and I worked at a pediatrician's office for a week while someone was out on leave. I think it was either maternity leave or maybe it was vacation or something. I don't remember, but I came in at the allotted time and I had about 10 minutes of training on the phone system. I was sitting at the front desk, and basically it was like, okay, you're off and running. Here's a little handy dandy manual for the phone system if you need more support. And, I'm going to be back here. Come and grab me if you need me. And then I was just basically left to my own devices. I just really was out of my element and felt so uncomfortable because I did not know what I was doing. So communication is multiple things at stage or step 3 of your planning process. It is sharing documents that you've created, sharing a life plan that you've created, introducing the team to each other, doing on-the-job training. And today we're talking about letters of intent. And letters of intent are a great way to be part of step 3, communicating your wishes, communicating the plan, communicating who all is involved in the plan, in the life plan. And how can you do that with a letter of intent? So a letter of intent is kind of like the mother of all babysitter notes, right? You're going out for the night. What does this babysitter or caregiver need to know about your kid or your person? And the only difference is you're not just going out for the night. You're going out and you're never coming back. So there's lots of stuff that you need to consider and fill in the blanks for. So side note here, we do offer an estate planning course and also our signature SNAP course called Special Needs Advocacy and Planning. And in both cases, they come with a course book and a workbook. And the workbook is really meant to, with all of its prompts, to get you thinking and writing about that letter of intent and what you want to communicate to that team that's going to take over for you. So if you're interested in that, look up Special Needs Academy on the Teachable app, and I will leave some notes about how to jump in and grab that and take a look at what it is. So some of the things that you'll want to consider as you are starting to communicate with your mother of all babysitting notes, your letter of intent, is what is in your estate planning documents. I'm asking you to start there because it's actually an easier, maybe possibly less emotional place to start. Take a look at your current estate plan and note all of the agents or people that you've put in place in those documents for your team, and start writing that down. Think about what pieces of your plan need to be communicated, just the highlights. If you've done planning with us, you have a roadmap document that can be anywhere from 20 to 40 pages long, and it will outline the summary of your plan to make it easy to communicate. Instead of 1,000 pages of documents, it's 20 or 30. And make it easy to communicate some of the more difficult concepts. If you haven't done planning with us, and most of you will not have, then you want to take a look at your plan documents and highlight what parts of the plan are confusing or might need an explanation. So, tip here, if it's confusing to you and you were in the room when the documents or the plan got created, then it's definitely going to be confusing to your team who are taking over. So it's important that you understand your own plan and also that you can communicate the salient points, the important pieces, to all of the people you've nominated in that plan to take on important roles. You might want to write down some questions for your estate planning attorney to go over the plan with them and make sure that you do understand those pieces that are confusing. And start noting the folks that you have nominated into different roles. Who's going to be your healthcare agent? Who's going to be your power of attorney agent? Who's going to be your trustee for any trust that you've created? Who have you identified as a trust protector if you have a trust protector in your plan? Who have you identified as a care manager? Anything in your plan that names a person, you're going to want to write that down and make sure that you have the addresses, phone numbers, and emails correct in your planning documents, but also, put them all in one place. So it's easy to compile for somebody who might have to jump in, especially in a crisis or an emergency. What kind of special issues do you need to consider for your health? So that is a good place to start. Start with your own healthcare. If you're in a crisis, a healthcare crisis, and you need your healthcare agent to make decisions for you, what would you want them to know? What do they need to consider? This is going to go beyond a list of medications and conditions. This is like, hey, I used this doctor at this hospital one time and I really did not like them. I never want you to go back to them. Or, oh my gosh, I had a reaction to XXX medication, or I have these allergies. So many things, right? I want to be cared for at home. I really want you to bring healthcare workers into my home. And please don't leave me in the hospital. Please don't send me to rehab. Whatever your wishes are, your agents are going to try to follow those wishes if it's at all feasible and possible. What types of sensitive situations do you have that really are important for your healthcare agent to know? Things like mental illness, drug use issues, alcoholism, just, any kind of dependency like that. I've had long-standing back issues that I don't really talk about, and you need to know that in case I'm headed off to a rehabilitation center and people are trying to get me to do things that my back doesn't want to do. And then think about if you had a life-threatening condition, or if you passed away unexpectedly, what would you want to happen to your body? I know, such a weird question, but all kinds of things to think about here. Do you want to be an organ donor? Do you prefer to be buried or cremated? Do you have specific wishes when it comes to that? It's important to think about your agents that you are selecting and make sure that they are the right people to make those healthcare decisions for you. Sometimes you want to just go to the obvious, like my adult kids, but that might not always be the best case scenario. You don't have to have, if you're married, you don't have to have the same healthcare agent list that your spouse does. But think about who would be good to do what I want. It's not always right to pick somebody in your family who's a nurse or a doctor. The real key factor is, will they listen? Will they pay attention to what I'm writing here in my letter of intent? Will they pay attention to what I'm telling them? Or will they jump in and use their own judgment and make decisions that they would want? That's really important. So thinking about making that healthcare list, it's good to make a deep list if you can. And they are going to go one to the next, and they are sequential. So only until the first person listed is not able to serve will the doctors go to the next person and the next person. So the next thing that you need to consider is financial decision-making while you're alive. This is a little bit more cut and dry, but not entirely. If you already have an estate plan, this is another good place to explore who have I put in charge? Who is my agent under power of attorney? Who is my trustee for my revocable living trust or my realty trust or whatever trust I have during my lifetime? If you're looking at a set of documents that's a little bit older, think seriously about whether the people that you've named are still the right people to make those financial decisions for you. Are you getting older and you've named siblings and they're all older than you? Is it time to start thinking about another generation? Does your power of attorney have all of the language that you would want it to have? Is it a robust document? What questions do you have about how it works? This is the time to ask those questions. Are there special circumstances that you need to plan for? Do you own a professional practice, like a medical practice, a veterinary practice, a law firm? You can't leave that practice to someone who is not licensed. Do you have special items of property that require licensure? Like, we will find clients sometimes have guns and their spouse is not licensed or their children are not licensed. And we need special provisions for what happens to those guns and who can actually take care of them. What does your agent need to know about maintaining your home, about making payments for your disabled adult children, things that you routinely pay for that your agent under power of attorney might not know unless you were to tell them? Do you have a vacation home that needs to be opened for the season or closed for the season? Anything like that may need special care. And then as you're starting to think about your agent under power of attorney, who will be making pretty much all the decisions that are non-medical in your life, think about a lot of times people will ask, well, can I name two people as co? So generally speaking, that's not a great idea. And if you are married, you probably want your spouse to have the same list that you do. Because picture yourself, you're married, you're long time married maybe, and you're in a household and you've got somebody who has to step in and pay bills for a little while. This, awful circumstances happen. You've had a terrible accident. You're both lying in comas side by side, holding hands in the hospital. And somebody needs to step in and pay your mortgage, your insurance bill, your car payment, and fund your disabled child or children. This, I know, is very scary to think about, and I'll tell you, it haunted me. It haunted me when my children were growing up. But you've got to figure out not just who's good with money, but again, who's going to pay attention to what you've asked of them? Who is going to have the time to step in for you? Who is trustworthy? And again, we want to have a sequential list, one person, and then when they decline or can't do the role, do the job, it will go to the next person and the next person and the next person. And it really does have to go beyond Uncle so-and-so who's really great with, has done great in the stock market. Some states refer to this document as a durable power of attorney for finances or just a durable power of attorney. So it might have different names. And these agents are also referred to as attorneys in fact. So when you're looking at your documents that someone has prepared for you, your estate planning attorney, just understand the verbiage, understand the names for things in your state. And this is the time for you to take a look at, what do I not understand about this document? What do I need someone to explain to me? Because for sure, anybody that you've named as an agent is probably going to have those same questions. So the next person or agents that you're going to think about as you're filling out your letter of intent, and instructing and communicating with those future agents, you need to pick an executor or a personal representative. It depends on what your state calls it, but the person who's in charge of your will when you die. This person is going to follow your instructions in the will and hopefully in your letter of intent as well. And make sure that your personal property, your real estate, and your cash, other investable assets are transferred appropriately to where they need to go. And that's going to follow along in your will. And then if you have one, a revocable living trust. This is a really good time to take a look at, in your letter of intent, filling out an asset sheet, making sure that whoever is coming along to look at your finances, to manage your bill payments while you're alive and not able to do so yourself or after you're gone, that they know every account and every account number, statements, life insurance policies, who to contact at your job or your former job, in the human resources or the benefits department. What do you have for retirement plans? Do you have long-term care insurance or disability insurance, short or long-term disability insurance? All of those pieces. What do you want to happen with all of the, personal property in your house, your car? I've got this great baseball that one of the original Boston Red Sox players signed. I have a Monet painting. I have something very sentimental. For me, I have all of these things that my Elizabeth made for me. And they're very precious to me because I have very few things left of her. And I would want to make sure that they go to her sister, Caroline. So nearly everybody has those items of sentimental value. Maybe you have a quilt that somebody made for you. Maybe you have a piece of furniture that got handed down through generations. Things like that. Very, very important that you start making a list of your assets and your personal property and detailing out for your agents, both your trustees and your agents under power of attorney and your personal representative / executor of your will. What is here and what do I want to do with it? Of course, they're going to follow along in your documents and do what your documents are telling you to do, telling them to do, but there's always gaps. Your estate planning documents are not going to detail wishes, even down to, I want this ring to go to cousin Jenny kind of thing. So you're going to want to list out your cash assets, your savings and checking accounts, money markets, things that are not in a retirement plan. Do you have any CDs? Do you have any annuities? Do you have any mutual funds? Individual stocks and bonds. Oh, they can be such a pain sometimes. Brokerage accounts, valuable personal property, not my, beautiful little sachets that my Elizabeth made me, dried flowers and things like that. But, things that really do carry a large value and may need to be assessed. Do you have a small business or have any closely held business interests? That is key. We would also need to make sure that there was someone, as I spoke of a little bit earlier, someone who has the licensure or the ability to run that business or close the business. Again, list your life insurance policies. Who's the owner? Who's the beneficiary? Is it term? Is it whole life or universal life? What's the death benefit if you know it? Leave the policy. Do you have an agent? Do you have a broker who handles all of your investments? Do you have any kind of an insurance agent for your long-term care insurance or your disability insurance? Very important to have all of that contact information and those policies handy for someone. And of course, retirement plans. If you haven't started drawing on them yet, your required minimum distributions, how does your person get access to them? Are they at Fidelity? Are they at Merrill Lynch? Are they at Morgan Stanley? Where are they? Who is the broker? Who should you talk to? Who should they talk to at your employer or your former employer who can help them navigate some of the benefits that you still have available to you? Are you currently the beneficiary of any trusts? What does that look like? Might be a trust left for you by your parents, your grandparents, and still ongoing. Do you have a copy of that document? Who are the trustees? Are you a current trustee of any trust that needs to be managed by your agent under a power of attorney? If possible, in the trust document. Are you anticipating any inheritances to come in? That would be really important for somebody to know. And any other assets that need to be listed. The next thing that you would really want in your letter of intent, and if you're getting the picture that this is not just a letter, you are so right. This is maybe a binder or a set of documents, and certainly not something that has to be done all at once in one day. Just pick it apart little by little. You know, it's like a big knot. Have you ever had one of those like horrible knots in your Christmas lights? I mean, like, who hasn't? It's like that. You start following a thread through and you just do one at a time. So we want you to list all your debts too in this letter of intent. You really need to let people know if you have a mortgage that needs to be paid, if you have any kind of loans outstanding, a car loan, like a heat loan, because you've done some environmentally friendly, exchange of your heating system and water heater and that sort of thing. Maybe you have solar panels on your house. Do you have any loans against your retirement plans? Do you have a loan outstanding for your businesses, or like anything, any liabilities that we would need to know about? And what are your basic bills? Do you have, can you grab like your phone bill, your mobile bill, your heat bill, your light bill? Like, who are all these people that we need to be in touch with so that we can make sure that the bills get paid until you are back in your home or otherwise? Definitely include any credit cards there. Were you intending on selling your home anytime soon? That would be great for someone to know if you were off to rehab and they were trying to decide whether to bring you home or to, put you in another location where you could get support that you need. What is your income? Do you have income from work still? Do you have a pension? Do you have Social Security coming in? Are you regularly drawing required minimum distributions from your retirement plan? And so on and so on and so on, including annuities. So this is the space where you're going to start thinking about your list of executors / personal representatives, whatever it's called in your state. This is kind of a short run job. It's, opening and closing your probate estate, making sure that assets that go through your probate estate to get retitled are retitled in accordance with your will. Most estate plans, if you've done a good job of aligning your assets with your plan, fully funding your plan is another way to think about it, then you probably don't have much going through probate at all. At least that's the hope. Sometimes we want things to go through probate, but most of the time we don't. So this is a short run job, and it's generally going to be the same list of people that you've listed as your agents under power of attorney. Not always, but it's probably best to have the same people, the same list of people for all your financial positions and roles, unless and until we get to special needs trusts. So you may have heard about revocable living trusts. This is a trust that could be managing your assets, because we're going to fund your revocable living trust to avoid probate and possibly do some tax planning. This trust is, going to be there for you while you are alive and not able to manage your own finances, and after you're gone. And usually the revocable living trust settles, it closes over time, and it funds either subtrusts for your children in the revocable living trust or standalone trusts for your children, like a special needs trust. So that would be something to talk to your estate planner about. This is another document that you are going to want to review if you've got one, and make sure you understand the terms. You don't have to understand every paragraph, but make sure that you are understanding the basics of your trust. And if there are confusing terms in there, or you're just not sure who's doing what and how things are getting done, that's the time to sit down with your planner again and also write down those confusion points in your letter of intent, especially once you figure out what the meaning is, what the definition is, how to navigate that document. If you have those questions, if you're confused, your agents, your trustees that you nominate are likely going to have those same questions and concerns. So when you think about choosing a trustee, remember that your revocable living trust trustees after you are probably also going to have a short-lived job. Most of the time, people will need a finance person or an agent for finances, whether it's through the revocable living trust or the power of attorney. They're going to need them for a short period of time. And then one of two things happens. You regain your capacity and you're able to, jump back in and take care of yourself, or you pass away and there's a short time frame where people need to settle your estate, and settling your estate is done through your will and through your revocable living trust. And then it goes on to fund buckets for your children. And those buckets are going to be another very important place to talk about what your wishes are. You want to start thinking about, is a special needs trust right for my adult child with special needs? What are my concerns about this? What are my questions about this? If I already have a special needs trust, again, you're going to review it. You're going to be looking for any confusion points that need to be explained to you. Again, just noting that if you're confused, your trustee is likely also going to be confused and need some explanation. But here is where we really, really want to jump in with the letter of intent. What would you want your trustee to know about your child when they're making financial decisions for your child, assuming that you are not here anymore, or they have to step in for you because you cannot support financially, you cannot support your child, you're not able to take care of your own finances. So things like, my child with autism loves vacationing and taking train trips. So I want to make sure that even if there's not a lot of money in the trust, that you're funding at least 3 train trips a year. Things like that are very important. My child loves baseball, and I want to make sure that you take him or her to at least, 2 games, 2 home games and 1 away game every year. They are really hard on their clothing, and you need to have a clothing allowance that's pretty hefty every month. whatever the case may be, things that are important to you. I really want to pay for my child's job coach, starting a business, whatever it is that's important to you. And what else would you want your trustee to know about your child that would help them use this trust to best benefit your child when you're no longer here or no longer able to? Things that, you know, that you really want them to know could be like, it's like our religion is very important to us. We have a membership at this temple as a family, and this community really supports us and rallies around my daughter, my son. Could you please make sure that someone takes him or her to temple every week? Could you please make sure that they are able to get out and run every day, work with a trainer, whatever the case may be? And who can the trustee go to ask questions about your child or about expenses and what your wishes as the grantor or creator or funder of this trust? Is that going to be a circle of care of family members? Is it going to be a trust protector? Is it going to be a guardian, a sibling guardian, or a professional guardian? Is there a therapist that we can get a release from to talk with them? Is there a loving care management team? Who is it that your folks in your circle of care are going to go to support your child, and also to make sure that your trustee is connected to what your child's needs are? And I know I keep saying child, but really most of the time this is going to be an adult child that we're talking about. Start thinking about, who is my circle of care? What is, the list of trustees for my trust, my special needs trust? Being a special needs trustee is a step beyond, and then some, being the trustee for your revocable living trust. Your child could potentially live 30 years longer than you. On average, it's at least 20. And that means that this is a long-term position, a long-term job, and they need that job description. They need to know what the expectations are of them, not just, Uncle Bob is great with money and he killed in the stock market. You want someone who has some expertise in the disability world, understands public benefits, is able to make good decisions about decreasing public benefits and using the trust money to really do something to take care of your child that you would want. Housing is a big area where that comes into play. If you're thinking about a trust protector, what role would the trust protector play? And what, thinking of them as an advocate and a friend to your adult child with disabilities, what kind of oversight would you like them to have, or management of the trust? Start thinking about guardians. Who do you have as a list of potential guardians if one is needed for your child? And this is an area where, you really want to honor your child's choices and let their voice come through big time. If you have minor children, you really need to be thinking about not just who the guardian is going to be, but where will they live? Will you want your guardian of your minor children to come and move into your house? Or will your children go across the country to live with, cousin Sally in California? These are very hard things to think about, but important, really important, because cousin Sally might be thinking all along, like, hey, I don't want to move to Massachusetts or Tennessee to take care of these kids, but certainly I'll have them come in my house. And you may have absolutely the opposite idea in your mind. That list of guardians is usually a tough one to come up with. So sometimes a sibling would make a good trustee, would make a good guardian, and sometimes not. If you've selected a sibling in your plan or multiple siblings in your plan, not your siblings, siblings of the disabled adult child, what do you see as some pros and cons to doing that? Every family is different, and we all have family dynamics that kind of run amok. Would your disabled person choose their sibling or not choose their sibling? And we certainly see it both ways. Would you be better off with a neutral third party? Would the siblings be in a better role as a trust protector rather than a trustee? If you have an estate plan already and you've selected siblings and you didn't think a lot about that at the time, or you have had a change in circumstances, what would you need to do to revamp that list of guardians, of potential guardians? What do you want the guardian to know? This is where writing down all of those, hairy medical issues for your child is going to be very, very important. And all the same things that I asked you to consider when you were writing down stuff for the letter of intent for yourselves. What medication? What doctors? What doctors do we never want you to take our child to again? What therapies do they benefit from? What has never worked for them? They love horseback riding. They love swimming. All of this is therapeutic. How do we make this happen? How do we keep this going? And finally, we talked about funding the plan, and we talked about things like life insurance and bank statements and all of that. And also making a list of your personal property and where you want that to go. But start thinking about specific people. How do you want to split the things that you own at the end of your life? Do you want it to go 50-50 if you have 2 kids, equal to all the kids? Do you have, charitable intentions? Do you have special wishes? You want to make sure that it's not only clear in your plan, but that you have in your letter of intent a simplified version, a summary version of what your wishes are in your plan. If there's any ambiguity at all in your documents, let it be known in your letter of intent what you are trying to accomplish. If I had $1 for every time a new client came into me with an already existing estate plan and said, oh, my estate plan does XYZ, and then you read the documents and you're like, no, it really doesn't do that. It doesn't say that. Having you write down what you think is happening in your plan is critical. And who are the advisors on your team? Who's your attorney? Who is your accountant? Who's your insurance agent, your financial advisor? Making sure that that circle of care is really filled out in your letter of intent and robust. A couple of other considerations that are, cropping up now in this day and age is, how do people get into your social media accounts? How do people get into your online banking, your online account for your cell phone? All of those things that people will need to know. If you have a password software program, how do we get into that password software program? Maybe this is a time for us to add them into that program so that they have access to certain things. If you don't, and you're like me and you keep a little book of all of your passwords, and I know that's bad. It's really bad, but it is how I function. Then you want somebody to know where the heck that book is so that they can go through and they can decipher all your little, cryptical notes in there. Do you have an Able account for your child? How do they get into the Able account? That's something that, we really don't want you to forget. And if you don't have everybody that you need in your circle of care as you're going through the letter of intent, this is a really great place to start identifying holes in your plan. That, that step 2, where we talked about, okay, here's all the people that I need, and oops, I don't really have half of those roles filled, or the people that I have in those roles are not going to still be in that role because they're 90, or we're moving to another state, or I haven't really enjoyed working with them, so I'd really like to think of somebody else. You want to make sure that you have written down all the biographical information for your family members, your child, and all of the team in your circle of care. Where do they live? What's their address, phone number, emails? How can I best reach them? Well, so-and-so travels, several times a year to Australia, and it's really difficult to reach them in April, June, and September. Those are the kinds of things that we need. You also want to start writing down stuff about your child that they like to do. Remember, I mentioned about the train trips. Well, sometimes it's not always connected to the finances. Are they a runner? Do they like their space and their quiet time? Do they really like to go for rides in the car? Ice cream is their favorite thing on the planet, and it's a good treat for, a tough day. Things like that. Last but not least is going to be all those disability diagnoses. They don't really tell somebody about your person, right? My Elizabeth had mitochondrial disease, and her mito looked so different from anybody else we had ever met because she was just Elizabeth in her Elizabethness. They don't call them rare diseases for nothing. But also autism. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, and same for an intellectual disability. You cannot make assumptions about people based on their diagnosis. So that's kind of like the last thing that you really need to communicate. Certainly it's good to have it on there. What level of education or schooling, or what is their work history or their current job? All of those like day-to-day living details that somebody would need to know about your child. And where do they live, and who takes care of them? What do you think about that placement? If it's not good, if your son or your daughter are often having unexplained injuries or bruises, write that down. I have to go there twice a week to make sure that they are okay. And if you can't do that, XYZ guardian or XYZ trustee or whoever, please hire somebody to step in and watch over them. The status of public benefits. What public benefits is your person on? Social Security. What kind of Social Security is it? Is it SSDI? Is it DAC benefits? Is it SSI? Are they getting straight up retirement now because they're 65 years old? Whatever the case may be. Do they have Medicaid in your state? What kind of Medicaid program are they in? Are they in a waiver program, like an intellectual disability waiver program? Do they have a housing voucher? All of those things are so important and critical. Do they get veterans benefits? I could go on and on and on, but you get the picture. Lastly, don't forget this piece, and this is really the last part. What are you dreaming about for your child? What do you see for their future? What do they see for their own future? write that down and dream big. What does the next 5 years look like? What do the next 10 years look like? What's the ultimate goal for job, for vocation and avocation? Where will they live? Who will support them? What kind of caregivers should they have, if any? What will it take to get them as independent as they possibly can be for their own level of function? All of those things, your trustee, your agent under power of attorney, your selected guardian, they are counting on you to communicate all of these important details and this important information. And I am really, really hoping that you don't find this so overwhelming that you can't get it done. Start small, grab a 3-ring binder and start throwing pages in there little by little. Oh, I've managed to at least type up their medication list. I've managed to at least do their list of doctors. I've managed to at least put together my banking information. Anything that you can get done on this list is going to be a blessing and a godsend for whoever you are leaving behind to do the caregiving. Thank you. I know this is a really tough subject. I really appreciate your hanging in there with me. And we are starting up a new mastermind. I'm so excited. And I will have another video about what a mastermind is so that you can hopefully jump on and see if this is something that you would like to do. Thank you. See you again.